Our wrestling adventure keeps on rocking on even though we don't have any fans, and we have now arrived here at the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. But I already know what you're asking yourself. Simon, was it a good show or was it a bad show? Because I can't come up with these things by myself. I need to know what the Finger of Power thinks. Then I tell you what I think or what the Finger of Power thinks, and you say, Simon, you bald asshole, you don't know what you're talking about, and then we have a lovely hug. Let's up those downs for AEW Dynamite. We are making sure that you believe in this brand new TNT title because AEW Dynamite did start off with Lance Archer and Jake Roberts coming to the ring, and as Murder Hawk was walking out, it was just like beating some guy up in the entrance tunnel, because why the hell not? And then Mr. Snake grabbed a microphone. Now his new gimmick seems to be that he hates women, doesn't think they should be wrestlers, doesn't think they should leave home, thinks they should cook, they should clean. You know this old shtick. And while it's going to be okay if the payoff is Brandy Rose slapping him right round the face, I don't really think that AEW is going to do that. I don't know whether Jake Roberts can take a beating, and if he's not going to get his ass kicked, I don't really know what we're doing. Somebody definitely has to shut him up though, so we will wait and see. And then we had, maybe unintentionally, the most hilarious segment with Cody Rhodes. Because in the background, as Jake Roberts was talking, you could hear someone revving a car. Now, Daly's place, where Dynamite was airing from, is kind of outside, so maybe you thought, oh, it's just someone trying to start their vehicle. But it wasn't. Cody was in this big truck, and he was revving away because he was so mad, as he should have been, because last week his wife got absolutely pulverized, and I was like, oh man, here he goes. Cody Rhodes is going to go flying into that arena, and he is going to go absolutely ballistic. And instead, he moved like 3 feet, hit some crappy metal thing, and then he just got out of the car. I mean, that is like me winding my fist over and over again, and then I go up to the guy that I was threatening to punch, and I go, and I kiss him on the nose. You're going to be like, well, that was very anticlimactic. And in terms of this, Cody wasn't banned from the building. He could have just walked in. I didn't really get it. What was far better was the brawl that these two engaged in afterwards, and if this is a sign of what's to come at Double or Nothing, you can take a pen and sign my name on the bottom line. Also, when they were just duking it out, Jake Roberts was like commentating over the top, and at one point, he called Cody Rhodes a squirrel, and that's my new favorite insult. If you do anything to me, I'm gonna look you dead in the eyes and goes, what do you know, squirrel? But the point was both were kind of matched as equals here, and they kept reversing each other's moves. Also, Cody is just so enraged, again as he should be, because of what happened last week. This was all very, very good, aside from the bits that I've already pointed out. Jake eventually pulled Archer away when he realized they were at an impasse because it's not the time and it's not the place. And the idea here is, oh my gosh, Archer can be gotten at. Although I say that, at one point Cody basically chucked a chair into his face and Archer sold that like he'd been hugged. He just smiled and walked through it, but I really do believe that when they have their match at the pay-per-view, it is going to be an absolute barn burner and make you go, that TNT Championship is more important than my own life. Good opening. Getting up. And it was the same for our opening contest, which was indeed the Jurassic Express taking on the Best Friends with Marco Stunt and Orange Cassidy at ringside. It was just all-out action. Getting up. It was a cool video beforehand when AEW got you up to date with everything that's been happening in the tag team division. And given that we did that last week with the women's division, I think we should keep doing these. So if you are a brand new viewer, you know exactly where we are in the story. Then we cut back to the ring, and Luchasaurus grabbed Jungle Boy and just hurled him at the Best Friends. Amazing. And the finish was absolutely nuts too, because Orange Cassidy was on the rampway teasing that he was about to do something crazy when Phoenix appeared from nowhere and kicked him so hard in the face, I wasn't surprised that words didn't come on the screen that just went fatality. Honestly, if you had told me this was a clip from the new Mortal Kombat game, I would have gone, yeah, it probably is. What is the deal with professional wrestling right now and people dying? AJ Styles is dead, Rey Mysterio is dead, Aleister Black is dead, and now Mr. Cassidy, he is definitely dead. It also led to MJF jumping the barrier, and he just thwomped Jungle Boy right in the face. And because of that, it allowed Taylor to hit the awful waffle, and he picked up the victory from his team. The last 30 seconds of this was insane. We weren't done then either, because Wardlow arrived and he just attacked Marco Stunt. So the only takeaway I can have here is if you're a big dude in AEW and you have dreams and wishes of making it feel like you're beating up a child, you will go after Marco Stunt. However, of course, Luchasaurus saved him after this. And if we do move into Luchasaurus versus Wardlow, I think that's quite a good program. But what a mad tag team match though, and I know it's not for everybody, because they're sitting there going, it's just spot after spot after spot. Why are you still watching AEW if you think this? You know what's coming, it should be in your brain. Cut to Alex Mares after this, who was trying to interview Jon Moxley, who had just arrived at the arena, but the champ was so mad, he just stormed past and even pushed the camera away. And Alex Mares was like, oh my gosh, we better get security out here. I've never seen Jon Moxley so enraged. And I was like, that's not true, Mr. Mares. Because did you not see the crazy match he had with Kenny Omega? He was definitely more angry then. We then had a four-way women's match between Chris Statlander, Britt Baker, Shida, and Penelope Ford. And all I care about, my only takeaway, was that at one point Chris Statlander, the alien, had grabbed Britt Baker, and the dentist was so scared she tried to bop Chris Statlander on the nose as if to communicate with her. That was great. We also saw a fish hook to try and negate the lockjaw, which Jim Ross called something like a Greco-Roman face grab. And all of this was really, really entertaining, and I think every single woman involved over the last few weeks has just got better and better and better. It's obviously the first time we've seen Chris Statlander for a while. I still enjoy her, is getting it up. Kip Sabian jumped on the apron at one point before he made out with Penelope Ford, and that was really stupid of them because Shida saw this and went, well, if you've got your back to me, I'm going to hit you with the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up, but Penelope Ford was able to kick out. And I realised the reason for this was because Shida was probably so disgusted with them kissing, she didn't hook it in properly. The finish came down to Penelope and Shida because Britt Baker had just decided, hey, I'm going to go out on the outside of the ring and lock in the lockjaw on this extraterrestrial, and that allowed Shida to hit her running knee to Miss Ford, and she got the victory, and it also means she's still the #1 contender for Nyla Rose. Cool. Shug D also cut a promo after this, reminding us that yes, Chris Jericho was insulting him when he called him Pineapple Pete, but he has embraced this, and then he even started drinking out of a pineapple while also doing a little bit of a boogie. It made me laugh, and as I've said before and I'll say again, it is just so cool to see someone that I once shared a dressing room with somehow be having a match against Le Champion. We will talk about it in a second. Then we had some more utter nonsense, which I've now realised is probably what we're going to get when Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy team together. You know what? I am alright with it. It's getting it up. They were taking on the proud and the powerful, and it was just nuts. I mean, Kenny Omega got attacked before he barely got in the ring, and when Matt Hardy came to make the save, you had the commentators shouting, oh, it's Damascus, he's 3,000 years old. What reality are we in? I mean, I've no idea what a brand new fan thinks of this, but luckily I don't have to worry about it because I've been watching wrestling ever since out of the womb. Shouldn't have said that, but I did. This obviously tied into everything that had happened 7 days ago because Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy wanted their revenge, but somebody else who wanted their revenge was Sammy Guevara after he was involved in a hit and run last week, a hit and run, which is a felony because he came out here and he was in a neck brace and he looked broken and he was going to hit Hardy with a steel chair, but unfortunately for Sammy, he wasn't able to, and he got twisted or fated on the steel instead. And it made me realise I only want 2 things from professional wrestling right now. 1, I want the immortal AJ Styles. I want that character more than anything, but now I would also like Sammy, please leave me alone, Guevara. It's just fun. Hardy also had blood in his mouth for most of this because he kept biting people, and what a sentence that is. And the ending came when Ortiz had just been slammed around for the while. He was on top turnbuckle. Kenny Omega gave him the running knee. Matt Hardy gave him a twist of fate from the top, and that was that. And yeah, this was kind of interesting because AEW doesn't usually do 50-50 booking. This was kind of 50-50 booking, but we needed it for the story. And again, you don't get mad when someone does something new. You get mad when they do it for the 52,476th time. So it was happy days, and then we shifted to Taz, who was once again talking to Darby Allin. He was trying to explain why Allin had lost to Cody a few weeks ago when Darby turned around and was like, look, Taz, the human suplex machine. Didn't say that, I said that. I get it, right? I once placed 3rd in amateur wrestling in the state of Idaho. I knew what I did wrong and I'm going to learn. And I was like, wait a minute, is that good? Is that good to place 3rd in the state of Idaho? If you said 3rd in the world, I would like been amazing. So I don't really know what we're doing here, but am I intrigued? Yes, I shall let it play out. We also had an interview with Shida, who was saying that she's ready for Nyla Rose, but as it turned out, maybe she's not, because Nyla did turn up and said, hey Shida, I've got something for you that I think you've been missing. And then she pulled out a kendo stick and twonked her right on the head. And this was almost comical in the way she did it. I can't even explain it. It kind of just went twang, and I laughed. And I'm like, I don't think I should be laughing at this. I also don't think Shida was missing being smacked in the head. Like maybe you miss a nice toy, or some ice cream, or a dance with your loved one. Few people miss getting hit in the head, but that's what's happening. And their match at the pay-per-view will be no DQ, falls count anywhere, street fight craziness. We then had an MJF squash match. Think of that, an MJF squash match. He was taking on Lee Johnson and he absolutely whooped him before he finished him off with the armbar. But I spent a lot of time going, do we need an MJF squash matches? Because we've seen a lot of squash matches on Dynamite recently, and it's been for the bigger guys like Wardlow and Brodie Lee and Lance Archer to get across that they're monsters. But I don't really think you can do it the other way, especially when you've got like a shib grinning heel, which is Maxwell Jacob Friedman. I don't know. I mean, you do want to let the audience know that he can wrestle and that he can be a threat, but it all depends what part of the character you're trying to get across. It then turned out that he too has a fetish with beating up kids, because he was like, look, Marco Stunt, I found out that you've got an open match contract and I say you should take me on next week. And that explains why Wardlow beat him up. 7 days, MJF versus Marco Stunt. I think Marco Stunt may be added to my wrestler death list. It was then finally time for Chris Jericho versus Pineapple Pete, and I'm not gonna lie, I was slightly biased here, and I was also sad when this was done, but I was sad in the way that I was meant to be sad. Because after Chris Jericho had like jockeyed Pineapple, like, I'm the best, Pete unloaded on him with a flurry, and I was like, yeah, get him, pal, get him. But unfortunately, Le Champion was too smart for this. He came flying out of the corner, he hit the Judas effect, Pineapple Pete went down like he'd fallen out of a tree, and of course, Chris Jericho got the win. I mean, this really was over in seconds, and what else are you gonna do? You can't introduce a brand new character and then have him beat Chris Jericho. It was the only thing you could have done, but again, it made me sad. It made me sad panda sad, and therefore, it gets a sad panda down. SPD. Jericho then grabbed a microphone, and I realized straight away, oh my gosh, I'm excited about this, because he's been so good on the stick over the last few months. I actually wanted to see what he was going to do, and did he let me down? No, he did not, and when you don't let me down, you get up. Because not only did he challenge the Elite to a stadium stampede match, which is just going to be a big scrap in a stadium, which means it's going to be nuts, he also encountered Vanguard 1. He was like, Vanguard 1, you're back, and I see you've got my t-shirt, because you remember what happened a few weeks ago, and then Chris was like, look, this is it. You have one more chance to join the Inner Circle, and then he changed his mind and he said, no, I've rescinded the offer, and instead I do have a new member. It's this guy, and it's Floyd the Baseball Bat. And I repeat that, Floyd the Baseball Bat is the 6th member of the Inner Circle, and Chris Jericho then proceeded to smash the absolute crap out of Vanguard 1. And when Matt Hardy came out to try and stop this, he was absolutely devastated. It was like he had lost his best friend. I mean, he honestly looked more downtrodden than Mojo Rawley when he found out that Gronk was going back to football, and somehow Chris Jericho and Matt Hardy are able to pull off the ridiculous but make me feel it in my bones and make me feel it in my gut. I want more of this, especially at the moment when we're not allowed fans in the arenas. It's just great. AEW then just threw out there that Mike Tyson, Iron Mike, will be presenting the winner of the TNT tournament with the championship. And I couldn't get my head around this, because the commentators sold it like they all needed the loo. Just like, I need to go take a leak. Mike Tyson is coming to Double or Nothing. It was so confusing. I mean, this has got to be leading somewhere, I think, but it blew my mind. It also led into our main event, which was Christopher Daniels taking on Brodie Lee. And as it turns out, the Exalted One is now telling announcers, you have to announce me as the world champion, and that's what's happened here because, of course, he stole that title from Mr. Moxley last week. And look, this was a very decent match, but I have to confess something. This is the first AEW World Title program where I feel a bit like something's missing and I can't figure it out. For starters, the commentators kept telling us that even though Brodie Lee was ranked 4th, he'd been really smart by attacking Jon Moxley, and that allowed him to jump the line. But because I'm a massive wrestling geek, I was like, well, why doesn't MJF do that? He's got the type of persona, the type of personality that wouldn't mind cutting corners, and yet he doesn't seem to care. I also kind of thought that Brodie should just run through Christopher Daniels here, so you're like, oh man, he's got all the power in the world, he's basically He-Man. But instead it was very competitive, and look, it was a really good match, I enjoyed it a lot, but I just didn't think the narrative was flowing in the way I expected it to. The Exalted One also kept relying on the Dark Order to ensure that he was successful, and while again that makes sense because you want people to look at the group and go, well, how is anyone going to beat them when they've got so many numbers? I think you kind of needed to establish that before this Christopher Daniels match, and especially longer out than the Jon Moxley match, which is happening in 2 weeks. For example, 10 was just getting involved at one point, which led to SCU trying to get rid of him, and then Brodie Lee tried to use a chair, but he screwed up, so Christopher Daniels threw that in his face, and that allowed him to then lock on the submission. And it seemed like Brodie Lee was going to tap out before more Dark Order members were there to break that up, and that's when everything changed suit. And there were some Drew McIntyre let's kick out of one-esque moment here to establish that, man, you really got to beat down Brodie Lee if you want to beat him. And ultimately, did Brodie Lee win? Yes, he did. He hit that discus lariat, he took Christopher Daniels' heads off, and he got the pin. So I don't really know, I'm torn, because on the one hand, you do have to get across again that the group is a nuisance, but you also want the guy in charge to feel more like a rocket ship coming at your ass at 700 degrees. You want to look at him and go, oh man, that guy's a mother hubbard. So it is a very, very tough one. After the fact, Moxley arrived and he started beating everybody up and he got on the microphone. He's all like, that title is the most important thing ever and I'm going to get it back. And if you think you can take me on, you're a moron. I'll shave your head and I'll eat all your hair. He didn't say that. I'm just missing my hair today. And I guess to try and prove the kind of damage he will do to these idiots, he then went and beat up the ringside area. If that's a thing that somebody can say, I mean, that's probably just going to piss off Tony Khan, but at least Jon Moxley comes across like the crazy person that he is. I do think they're going to have a good match at Double or Nothing, but all of this left me going, well, now I'm not so confused about the direction we'll go in at the pay-per-view. I think Jon Moxley is going to win, and then I don't know what we do with Brodie Lee. And I could be wrong. Maybe I've gone completely down the wrong path here, but that's okay. That's on me. That's my fault. I'm not saying any of this was bad. I'm just saying for my taste, I would have shuffled it around a little bit. And that's why, even though it's going to ruin my mentions for the next 24 hours, it's getting a down. It's not like this was a crap down. It was just for me and what I like from professional wrestling, maybe you could have done something different. Even with all of that said, though, it was another good episode of AEW Dynamite, and there ain't no two ways about it now. AEW, atmosphere-wise, is doing a far better job than WWE, to the point I just want WWE to steal it. Remember when all those third-person shooters came out and they just stole Gears of War's active reload? Do that, WWE. Steal the active reload, put people in the crowd, just make some noise. I really need the noise. Overall, it's getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's AEW Dynamite. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, then head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you for watching. See you soon.